everybody. What I have here is a January 30th, 1986 USA Today. Modern newspaper of the time. This was a Thursday. We were coming off of the Challenger tragedy. Let me unfold it out here. And the entire back is a full-page ad for Bud Light Ironman competition. And it says, think about it. In a matter of hours, they will swim 2.4 miles, cycle 112 miles, run 26.2 miles. Incredible. No, Ironman. Watch the Bud Light Ironman Triathlon World Championship on ABC's Wild World of Sports, Saturday, February 1st at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you'll see what an Ironman is made of. So, on the cover, let's see, the stories. NFL on drugs, a mess. It's got some scores here. Peak perks. Firms jazz up their benefits. High marks on U.S. health report card. Knots landing star to leave. Lisa Hartman. Newsline. We have snow flurries in the northeast. Clearing in the southeast. Southern plains. Cloudy in Midwest. Northern plains. Stormy in the west. Wall Street's up. Global economy. Agriculture nominee Richard Lang. A disabled survey. Basically the little snippets you found in U.S. Today. They always had a little graph here. In this case, it's where our money goes. 31% to housing, 20% to transportation, 17% to food, 10% to miscellaneous, 9% to insurance, 5% to clothing, 4% to healthcare, and 4% to entertainment. That doesn't seem right. Entertainment and healthcare get the same percentage on that pie chart. The Capitol in mourning for the Challenger astronauts. They had the flags for each astronaut at half-mast. Actually, that's more than 7 flags there, so it's probably just all the flags on the lawn were at half-mast. Cover story. Her lessons in space will not be lost. This is about Christa Mcauliffe. And if you look at the picture, you'll see all of the astronauts in a small picture where Christa Mcauliffe was in a large picture. But, you know, there were some famous astronauts here. For example, Ron McNair was the first African-American in space. Judy Resnick was the second woman in space. And I believe Ellison Onizuka was the first Hawaiian, a Pacific Islander in space. So it's really kind of a shame. And I'm not saying, you know, anyone's more deserving than anyone else. But how they were sort of put in the background so much when this thing happened. Because I remember, and it was very sad when, of course, when the young teacher died. But I think that there was a lot of, they didn't really discuss these other astronauts in great detail, because I think all of them deserved a lot of attention. USA pays painful respects. Many clues, no answers. I believe in the end, the official cause of the accident was determined to be a faulty O-ring in the solid rocket boosters, which meant that when they ignited, that more than one section ignited at the same time, causing an overload of ignition, literally. So, tragedy in space. So basically, we have a whole additional front page, and as you can see, that this says second front page. So this is all discussing the Challenger, and you know, there's not a lot of 1986 newspapers that are in good condition, and so sadly we generally just saved the ones from historic events like this. So a lot of my newspapers are from important historical events. They're not just day-to-day newspapers. I actually picked up a Sunday paper today, and I just want to save it. So just to have it, because I don't know how much longer Sunday papers are going to last. If anyone would like to, watch that video, let me know, and I'll flip through it to talk about it. Francis Scobie's widow is dedicated to the program. Former Texas Treasurer's NASA job, acting chief thrust into agonizing row. In the weeks before the Shuttle Challenger explosion, NASA acting administrator William Graham said he had the greatest job in the world. If I were president, I'd take the NASA job, said Graham. Now Graham, 48, will shepherd the space agency through an agonizing investigation, one that focuses on the failure of technology he treasured. What Christa wanted to teach. Here's the lessons that she had planned. Christa Mcauliffe was carrying lesson plans for 2 teaching sessions from space when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded Tuesday. Presenting those programs was to be the culmination of months of work and training and an opportunity to educate millions of children about space. The first lesson was to be a tour of the shuttle, and the second was several experiments, including showing how water beads up in space and a presentation on future space projects. Here's a look at portions of Lesson 2. Lesson 1 was going to be called The Ultimate Field Trip, and it was going to just be a tour of the space shuttle. And here's 2, a liquid experiment to see how the properties of oil and water are similar or different in space. Get some coffee here. And here's the procedure. She was going to fill a plastic bottle half full with water, half with corn oil. Fill the other bottle 1/3 with water and 1/3 with corn oil, leaving 1/3 air. And then put a marble in each bottle to act as a mixer. Shake up the bottles. Result: on Earth, the ingredients mix but separate back into layers. In space, the ingredients mix and stay mixed. That's interesting. And that certainly has something to do with gravity. We're dealing with oil and water, and the reason they separate is because they have different weights, I believe. So if there's no weight, maybe my theory is that it's not going to separate because of the weightlessness. Solid experiment. To show how solid materials behave in space, 1 clear plastic bag, 15 full-size marshmallows, 15 M&M type chocolate candies. Put the marshmallows and candies into the bag. To close the bag and shake it. On Earth, the candies will settle to the bottom because they're heavier. In space, however, the marshmallows and the candies will stay mixed up because they weigh the same. Nothing. She also wanted to talk about future space projects, including the Space Telescope and the space station. So, and there's another story. Well, that was just the continuation. Mcauliffe, a role model for all. In other news, an ex-mafia lawyer cites corruption. Mayor of Philadelphia will be fined. Let's see. Nixon released, recovered. Former President Richard Nixon left the hospital Wednesday after 2 days of treatment of a viral infection he caught in the Bahamas. He was 73. New York City Commissioner resigns. Jury gets Navy murder case. Antelope, Oregon makes a return. Let's talk about that a little bit. There's a whole documentary about that. The Bhagwan Rajneesh. Him and his assistant name, what was her name? Sherry or something like that. The Bhagwan's gone, and this rural community of 17 residents has its spirit back. The sign at the city limit proclaims antelope. Hallelujah, said James Opre, Antelope's new mayor. We've got our town back. More than 3,000 followers of deported Indian guru Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh have left Antelope, renamed Rajneesh in 1983 when his disciples gained control of the city council. About 150 Rajneeshis, still wearing Bhagwan necklaces, remain at the commune 19 miles from here. They live in the commune hotel awaiting a buyer for the $40 billion property. We're kicking back, enjoying the fruits of our labors, said Ma'anad Sarita. Ma'anad Sarita. Sarita was the one who was like the big villain, I believe, in the whole thing. But I have no idea what I'll do next. You've got to watch this documentary. It's crazy. I don't want to spoil it, but there's a whole documentary about this, and it is unbelievable. AIDS care concepts changing. We're talking about the AIDS epidemic, which was in 1986 was a big deal. It's of course a big deal no matter what year, but it was still relatively a new thing. Five states were celebrating special anniversaries in 1986. Spaceline. Vibration could have caused blasts. So there's theories about the space shuttle. A breakup of one of the main engine turbines, sending a blade through the wall of the main fuel tank. Premature firing of one of the rocket motors. Early detonation of the exploding boat used to free the shuttle from the external fuel tank and booster rockets. World offers condolences. Condolences from foreign leaders continued to pour in Wednesday, including a message from Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. He said, "We share the feeling of sorrow in connection with the tragic death of the crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger. We express our condolences to the people of the United States and to their families." White House spokesman Larry Speakes said telegrams had been received from 19 foreign governments, as well as the United Nations and NATO. A telegram from Pope John Paul II expressed the pontiff's deep sorrow. Day for teachers proposed. Reagan calls the families of the astronauts. Concorde's trauma. Bleak and cold. Town's mood matches its weather. This is the town where Christa Mcauliffe was from. This whole page here actually discusses the other astronauts. Sadly, the only one page for all of them, but still, it is some recognition. But we see pictures of these amazing people. Ellison Onizuka, who was born in the shadow of the Mauna Loa volcano. He became an engineer and a test pilot, and that's pretty impressive. Judith Resnick. She skipped first grade in Akron, Ohio high school. Friends dubbed her the Brain. Ron McNair. After his last shuttle flight, February 11th, 1984, Ron McNair holds his son. Christa Mcauliffe is here. So this is just a review of, I guess everyone's included on this. It wasn't just all of the other restaurants, but that's okay. U.S. activists injured in Nicaragua. U.S. Indian activist Russell Means, who you might recognize from the movie Last of the Mohicans. He played Chingachgook. Late Russell Means. He's passed away since. U.S. Indian activist Russell Means, who joined native Nicaraguans in their guerrilla war against the Sandinista regime, was slightly wounded by shrapnel in a Nicaraguan Air Force attack. He remains inside Nicaragua, said Delano Martin, executive of the Misrata Indian anti-Sandinista group. The group supports the Nicaraguan Indians' fight for autonomy. Means suffered slight arm and leg wounds Saturday when planes from the Sandinista Air Force bombed a village on Nicaragua's isolated Caribbean coast. Marcos Rapsakino. This is the whole Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines. That was a big news story in the 80s. A plane crash in Mexico kills 21. Rebel takes oath as new president of Uganda. We are coming off of Idi Amin a few years before. Women in politics on the rise. And we have an ad here for Conrail. We let our performance and our customers do the talking for us. In 1986, how did we say Conrail is a great transportation company without blowing our own horn? And then we have across the USA. And USA Today would have like just the little blurbs. Like in Alabama, Buddy Studer, 5, saw himself on TV show about missing kids, was returned to his mother. His father, Ben Studer, will return to Kentucky to fight for custody. Shuttle. State School Superintendent Wayne Teague urged residents to burn porch lights tonight in memory of the astronauts. And I scan over. If you want to look at if you're living in the States, you can look. Every single state has a shuttle section. So they have their local news, and then how they're going to address the shuttle tragedy. So let me just scan. Steel yourself. America's most basic industry is dying, and nobody but us seems to care. Are we to depend on the Japanese, the Koreans, the Brazilians, and the Europeans to defend our country? United Steelworkers of America bought a whole-page ad. No planes, no ships, no tanks, no cars, no roads, no rails, no jobs, no income, no marketplace. Without steel, there is no national defense. Without steel, there is no American commerce. Without steel, there is no American standard of living. This is a union ad. Opinion pieces. Curb big payouts to solve this crisis. Voices from across the USA. Do you think too many people are suing? And they were talking about this then. They were talking about things like tort reform and frivolous lawsuits, and it was becoming a big thing in the 80s, and I don't know where we stand with it now. I used to drive a garbage truck, then I sued somebody. I want to say that a lot of the misconceptions about lawsuits stemmed from a famous lawsuit, and it was in the 80s, of a woman who burned herself on coffee from McDonald's. And many people correctly identified that as a fraudulent lawsuit. But the actual story is this. At that time, McDonald's kept the coffee at an extremely high temperature so it could maintain the fresh smell for customers walking in. When she spilled the cup of coffee on her lap, it literally burned through her skin and muscle tissue, causing severe damage requiring surgery and reconstruction. So it was a big deal, and a lot of people don't know that. That's why McDonald's lost the lawsuit and had to put the warnings on their cups. It's not stupid, and it wasn't frivolous. It was a real deal, and a lot of people should research that before they jump to the conclusion that that was a frivolous lawsuit. How the centuries changed the world of a child. Were there any real differences between modern kids and those of the 17th, 18th, and 19th century? Well, I think there's differences between kids of less than that now. Here's the weather map. weather across the USA. The blue is cold. It looks like the warmest we get is in the 60s through this band from New Orleans up to Denver and across to Los Angeles. And then slightly, well, I take that back. The 70s here in the bottom of Florida and the southern part of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California was in the 70s. Then the deep south was in the 50s. The upper south was in the 40s and 30s. And then the north was in the 10s. So it was pretty cold day. Hawaii's in the 90s. And Alaska is in the 10s and below zero. This is January. Now, I don't know if USA Today still exists, but they had the sections color-coded and broken up, and now we are in the money section. We're in the 80s, so we are in the time of the Wall Street, Wolves of Wall Street, and the yuppies, and all of that stuff. USA Today Autos 86. Soup's on at Miami Hospital. Judy Stanton figures she has enough chicken soup to make it through the year's cold season. About 8,000 cans. Stanton's public relations director for Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami Beach, which trumpets chicken soup as good for the common cold. The hospital made headlines in the late 1970s when it released a study that came down on the side of many grandmothers. The study, published in Chest magazine, said hot chicken soup helps clear stopped-up nasal passages. Capitalizing on the publicity generated by the study, Mount Sinai began distributing its private label stock in January 1985. Today it is sold or given away about 12,000 cans of the stuff, made by Manischewitz Food Products Corp. While its merits as a cold remedy remain a matter of debate, chicken soup has proven itself unsurpassed as an attention getter. The story of the hospital soup has been carried by broadcast stations, newspapers, and magazines across the USA. We have a huge media clip book, Stanton says. Robert Anderson, chairman of Rockwell International Corp, was builder of the space shuttle. So there's a lot of articles about how he feels regret about the Challenger. Robert Anderson was in his office on the 54th floor of the U.S. Steel Building office in Pittsburgh when he heard news of the explosion Tuesday. He had planned a reception in Washington that afternoon for senators and congressmen before President Reagan's scheduled State of the Union address. He canceled the reception and spent Wednesday in Pittsburgh. My executive assistant came in to me around 11:30. She said, "My God, there's trouble with the shuttle." We immediately went into the next room and turned it to the TV. They were in the midst of a replay. I was shocked beyond belief. It seemed just a tremendous national tragedy. I felt deep regret because I know the people who built it and the people we've worked with for 15 years at NASA. It was one of the most overwhelming experiences I've ever had in my life. I knew immediately when I saw the explosion that there was no hope. It kind of bothered me that the people who were reporting it on television were giving some kind of hope. I was a little choked up because I knew there was no chance. I didn't stay with the television for long, 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't even want to watch it anymore. I went back to my desk and put in a call to George Jeffs, president of Space Operations, which built the shuttle. I asked him what he knew. We talked for a little while, naturally speculation. We were in contact every hour or so until 11 on Tuesday last night, trying to learn about what had gone on. It's a very complex system. There are so many possibilities, and I hope we find it. a lot of people ask the question, well, could they have ejected? And the fact is no, although it was possible, and I believe that the Enterprise, which was the first test shuttle, had ejection seats, the Challenger did not. They just didn't foresee something like that happening. Lotus helps Microsoft open its Windows line. So here we are in 1986, and let's talk about Microsoft Windows. Microsoft Corp., the USA's #2 maker of software for personal computers, I believe they were after IBM, said this week that Lotus was #1, that #1 Lotus Development Corp. Will develop software to take advantage of Microsoft's new $99 Windows program. Windows is a graphics interface environment that allows a computer to perform tasks by pointing to symbols on the screen. Example, a trash can to delete data, rather than typing in complex codes. It also allows a computer to run more than one program simultaneously. Both companies declined to say when the Lotus products would be available and what they would be, but the announcement is a big help to Windows, which was released last November after more than a year of delays. So think about that. What we're just finished reading there was discussing Microsoft Windows, the program that the majority of us who use a computer, and even Mac, is Windows and Macintosh. I mean, they have the same overall idea. You click a window. Like Mary uses a Mac, I use Microsoft. I'm an accountant, so accountants typically use Microsoft. Mary's a designer, she uses a Mac. Let's read about this. This is video rentals. Goliaths fighting small video Davids. Small videotape rental stores face a new competitive squeeze from convenience stores and video specialty superstores, which may force many of them out of business. The entry of supermarket and drugstore chains, convenience stores, and large video retailers with big selections will put the final nail in the coffin of the small video retailer, said Ron Berger, president of National Video Incorporated, which has 650 USA franchises. 7-Eleven stores last week joined Safeway supermarkets and Rite Aid pharmacies in the movie rental business. And just to put a pin there, we used to rent our movies at Safeway and at Skaggs Alpha Beta when I was a kid. The new players will force smaller stores to emphasize selection and service. Those who don't will not survive, experts say. There will be tremendous consolidation in the industry, said Robert Bartlett, partner with the accounting firm Touche Ross, joined with Deloitte later on, Deloitte Touche. Without a unique product, a video store must offer lower prices or more expertise than the stores across the street. About 20,000 video rental stores, mostly small independents, have closed since the late 1970s, according to entertainment industry consultant Stephen Roberts, former president of 20th Century Fox Telecommunications. Of the 20,000 stores remaining, Berger believes the 6,000 carrying fewer than 700 movie titles are doomed. The number one reason somebody chooses an outlet is assortment, says Richard Karen of the 84-store Arrows Video Club, the USA's largest independent video chain. To satisfy members, you need at least 1,500 movies. But Doug Reed, spokesman for Southland Corp., 7-Eleven's parent company, said it isn't trying to compete with the big stores with its 200 selections. No one else can offer our convenient locations and 24-hour service, he said. Some retailers say they aren't worried because the new competitors don't offer the same expertise and service. People who rent want someone they can talk to and ask questions of, said Stephen Apple, editor of Video Insider, a trade publication. That's the edge specialists have. This is a very service-oriented business, said Cheryl Wood, owner of the independent video spot in Brandon, Florida. We know movies. Everybody in 7-Eleven can tell you the title of a movie from a description of the plot. Most in the industry agree that the changes, from the new competitors to the shakeout, will be positive for the industry in the long run. A lot of people looked at the video as a way to get rich quick, said David Shaw, East Coast editor of Video Store magazine. It's not that kind of business anymore. It's becoming very professional. This is before Blockbuster. This is before movie gallery. This is before the major video rental stores. And did you glean from that article some things? For example, the knowledge of movies was an issue. This is before you could whip out your cell phone and click on IMDb. This is before there was Rotten Tomatoes and all of the many articles, all of the apps, all of the streaming services. So everyone is a movie expert now. At that time, you might go into a store and be like, what was that movie that had Marlon Brando where he was in the Pacific? Or what was that movie that had Humphrey Bogart where he was in the Merchant Marine or whatever? Because people didn't have a resource. I mean, you could buy a book, a big book. You could buy Leonard Maltin's book that came out later, but for the longest time, we didn't have a resource, a catalog of movies. People had to be kind of experts in that field, and now that's a field that no one needs to be an expert in anymore. We all have a catalog of some kind. Kentucky, the business environment is right. When it comes to attracting new businesses, Kentucky shines. There's the governor of Kentucky, and they are promoting opening your businesses in Kentucky. So, I've only been to Kentucky a couple times. I have been to Paducah. I remember I was with my parents. It was like 1988, and we were in Paducah, and we ended up getting lost. This is before GPS, so we were trying to use a road map. And I remember we were commenting that Paducah was like some kind of a black hole. We couldn't get out of Paducah. We kept going around in circles. The same thing happened to me when I used to drive through Memphis. Memphis was like if you were driving across the country using your map, your paper map. Memphis, a lot of times, was an easy city to get lost in because the interstate would let out in the city and then pick up elsewhere. So you had to track down the interstate. It was rough. And here's more about Kentucky. Now, wait, I'm gonna say something. I went to Kentucky again. Mary and I took a trip to Ohio a few years ago, and we went to a horse park in Kentucky. It was a horse museum, and I really enjoyed that as an admirer of horses. And we enjoyed that whole museum and getting to see the horse shows and touch and pet the horses. It was really cool. Cultural diversity creates a quality of life unparalleled. They're talking about music and arts and crafts, tourism, and we're still in business. Siemens pulls plug on consumer sales, focuses on systems. Motorola, Zenith diversify. Motorola and Zenith were big companies in the 80s. Finding bargains in Canada. Canadian cars blocked. Let's read the Canada one. The record low value of the Canadian dollar against its U.S. counterpart has not inspired the rush of USA shoppers across the border that the crash of the Mexican peso brought. Prices for many things, especially food, are higher in Canada, but bargains can be found. Best bets, big ticket items such as furs and travel, not only because of Canada price, but because non-Canadians qualify for a refund of the 10% federal sales tax and provincial taxes. One thing about Canada, if you want to travel and have an experience that's like Europe, I'd recommend going to Old Quebec. You can stay in a hotel that is 500 years old. You can walk in a very European-looking city. You will be using currency from a different country, and you will be around people who speak French. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like going to Europe, but you don't have to leave the continent. And here's the stock reports. New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. Your family will tell you how good it tastes. Mash's smoked ham. Mash's, prepared with pride. For 25 years, Mash's has been known as the lower salt ham, Well, we still are. A typical serving of Mash's ham has 33 and a third less salt, but now Mash's ham steaks are more nutritious than ever, showing a significant reduction in calories and cholesterol. How significant? A recent independent lab test demonstrated that a 3-ounce serving of Mash's ham steak is substantially lower in calories and cholesterol than comparable servings of beefsteak, Purdue chicken, and fast food chicken served by Kentucky Fried Chicken and Roy Rogers Fried Chicken. I'm just gonna step in right there. Yes, if you buy a package of ham in the cold cut section in your store, you will certainly be ingesting less cholesterol than KFC. And that's, to me, that seems like a no-brainer. Mash's ham steaks are a quick and easy way to serve your family a nutritious, well-balanced meal, but you don't have to tell them that. They'll love Mash's hams because they taste good too. Does Mash's ham still exist? I don't, and I lived through this time. I don't remember this brand at all. So they got a whole page ad on USA Today. You think I don't remember that one bit. And we're in the sports section. Basketball, hockey, Thursday TV sports. Number 1 North Carolina is at Virginia for a college basketball game on ESPN. There was just one ESPN. A steroids bill. California would educate the 9th graders about the danger of anabolic steroids under a bill passed Wednesday by the state assembly. The bill would require education officials to develop a steroid education package and distribute it to school districts. And I remember this. They had a lot of... This was the Just Say No period, and we had a lot of, in our health classes, a lot of assignments and films to watch and presentations about drugs, alcohol, and steroids. And television shows had steroid episodes. I don't know if you ever watched 21 Jump Street. It was in the later 80s. They had an episode where they were undercover trying to break up a steroid ring, but Pinhall got hooked on the steroids. It was funny. 21 Jump Street was funny because usually whatever they were investigating, one of the police officers would end up falling for it. Like if they were investigating a cult, one of them would actually join the cult and be brainwashed. It was really kind of funny. Cartoons. Girls in sports compete to win. How other sports handle drugs. They're talking about the problem with cocaine in football. Apparently, in the 80s, there was a problem with a lot of football players taking cocaine. And Chris Everett... She was gonna host a show. And across the USA in sports. I'll once again sort of scan if you're in the States and if you want to pick out your state. More scores and NHL and NBA. And we are in the next section in purple, which is the life section. And just to remind you, we are looking at Thursday, January 30th, 1986. So, let's start looking at Lifeline. Gee whiz, who said chivalry is dead? The concerned city fathers of Atlanta are seriously trying to upgrade womanhood. This would involve requiring nightclub dancers to wear at least G-strings and pasties. The city council's public safety committee voted 5-2 on the measure Wednesday, The full council will address the issue next week, says Councilman Dozier Smith. This would improve the morals of the city a little bit and upgrade womanhood. Okay. There's the rub. Some folks are just itching to go to Club Med. Then there are others who itch when they leave. The latest New England Journal of Medicine reports on Club Med Dermatitis. Dr. Wayne White of New York reports that a female patient broke out in a rash on her thighs from playing a co-ed drinking game during which men used their chins to slide limes down the bodies of women. When treated with steroids, the condition usually abates within 7 to 14 days. Yeah. I'm sure there's other things that you could get. Long overdue welcome. A cavalcade of stars will perform at Welcome Home, a February 24th benefit at the Los Angeles Forum to honor Vietnam veterans. Why now? It's about time, says Jeff Garrett, one of the event's organizers. Proceeds from the 4-hour program will benefit a dozen veterans organizations. The roster of celebrities includes Robert De Niro, Anne Margaret, Daniel Travanti, Ed Asner, Reggie Jackson, Herbie Hancock, Edward James Olmos, Pee Wee Herman, and Tom Brokaw. Tickets are $16.50 and $17.50. Television rights are for later broadcasts are currently being negotiated. Anne Margaret is going to be honoring. Right direction. The Directors Guild of America announced the nominees for its 38th annual awards Wednesday. The Guild's pick almost always portends the winning director of the Academy Award. Only the 2 DGA winners have failed to capture the Oscar. This year's nominees: Ron Howard for Cocoon, John Huston for Prizzi's Honor, Sidney Pollack for Out of Africa, Steven Spielberg for The Color Purple, and Peter Weir for Witness. Awards will be presented March 8th in Los Angeles and Manhattan. Troubled Teddy. Things are not all right with Teddy Ruxpin, the electronic stuffed bear whose nose and mouth move when it talks. Sometimes the $65 bear just doesn't work. The manufacturer reports that 12,000 of the 800,000 Teddy Ruxpins sold have been returned. Half have had mechanical problems. The other 6,000 worked, but owners didn't know how to operate them. This reminds me of a story in the 80s. They had made a doll. It was a Cabbage Patch Kid. And they made a special Cabbage Patch Kid that would eat. So it came with plastic food, and its mouth would move, and and they had a mechanism that made it look like it was moving under the skin. So, and you would put the little plastic food in its mouth, and it would eat it and swallow it, and then you could retrieve it. The problem is it would also eat hair, and if your little girls got their hair stuck in its mouth, it would eat it all the way and rip the hair right out of their scalps. That really happened, and they had to recall all of those Cabbage Patch Kids. And I will say also that $65 for a Teddy Ruxpin, that was a lot of money in 1986. The income to support a family of 4 was in the 20,000s back then, to live middle class. So $65 is a lot of money for a toy. Benatar Tour. Pat Benatar begins her first tour in 3 years tonight at the University of California at Davis. Other dates include Oakland's Coliseum on Sunday, Los Angeles Forum on Monday, Houston Summit February 7th, St. Paul Civic Center February 12th, and Chicago's Horizon February 13th. Fire and Ice. Chukchi, a Lincoln Park Zoo polar bear in Chicago, jumped in her pool Wednesday for some fun. The only problem was the 12-foot pool was only half full. The walls were coated with ice, and the poor deer couldn't get out. The fire department was called. It took all the water in one truck and then the aid of a fire hydrant. Chukchi found this highly amusing and chewed on the hose. An hour later, she crawled out. Let's see. The Mardi Gras is coming up, and there's a guide they're going to publish. USA Snapshots, a look at statistics that shape our lives. Watching the Wheel. This is a bar graph showing that Wheel of Fortune has more viewers than Jeopardy and MASH, the new Newlywed Game, and Entertainment Tonight. The big roundup of ranch rhymers. We're living healthier and longer. Yeah, we were really talking about health in the 80s, especially cholesterol. Um, Now, if you, for example, if you do a keto diet, you would eat a lot of butter, fat, and red meat and lose weight. But at this time, just the thought of a diet like that would have been unthinkable. We were avoiding eggs, we were avoiding salt, butter, and anything with cholesterol. A lot of vegetarians, that was becoming popular. Smoking was definitely a culprit back then. If you smoke cigarettes, it has the ability, it can increase your triglycerides, which can harden your arteries by not allowing the cholesterol in your system to digest. So a lot of people smoked in the 80s, so there were a lot more heart attacks. Abraham's Lincoln. The honest look. F. Murray Abraham, who won an Oscar for Amadeus, is the latest actor to play Abraham Lincoln. He appears with Richard Chamberlain as the adventurer John Charles Fremont in the CBS miniseries Dream West, which I'd never heard of, and I would probably like to watch it. John Charles Fremont was an officer in the Civil War, and he was already famous, and he was thought of to be, well, let's put it like this. When the Civil War first started in America, the two officers that they thought were the most important were John Charles Fremont in the North and Albert Sidney Johnston in the South. They were both considered to be the best officers. They never considered Grant Lee or Stonewall Jackson, William Sherman, George Meade, Phil Sheridan, James Longstreet. I mean, a lot of the greatest generals hadn't really been discovered yet. Lucy Arnaz, the daughter of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. Lucy's career is in tune. Her family's wonderful. Lisa Hartman leaves Knots Landing, which was a primetime soap opera. Both sides of the film Heartburn with Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep. Nora Ephron says Heartburn, the movie about her life starring Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson, is a bittersweet love story, a lot like The Way We Were, only funnier. Ephron and her husband and Watergate reporter Carl Bernstein talk about the movie due this summer in the February issue of Washingtonian magazine. Both say they are talking in the interest of accuracy about Ephron's book and the movie that depicts the breakup of their marriage. Ephron has been criticized for subjecting their two children to publicity. Bernstein sued and won from Paramount the right to see the screenplay and first cuts of the movie and to express concerns chiefly about the children, Jacob and Max. Of the controversy, Ephron says, "Well, I continue to be perplexed and amazed. To the best of my knowledge, divorce is essentially the main topic of American fiction. For the last 30 or 40 years, Updike, Bruce J. Friedman, Mailer, and Philip Roth, etc. The thing that has perplexed me about this issue, do people think that the children are not going to be aware that we are living together?" Ephron also says, on Meryl Streep, "During Silkwood, Streep was about to get pregnant, and I said, well, actually, Meryl, if you were pregnant for this, it wouldn't hurt. Meryl was she's so very beautiful, and I'm not. I know that's the truth. I'm sort of rattled by that. On the Streep-Nicholson team, it feels very Tracy and Hepburn." Bernstein said of Ephron, "It seems to me that Nora, who is otherwise a terrific mother, has been rather reckless in this instance." Later, he says, "You don't go on crapshoots with your children." So, Nora Ephron has pretty much had her entire life chronicled in movies, starting with Take Her, She's Mine in 1963, a movie about her as a teenager, written by her parents, to Heartburn, written about her young adult life, and then all of the many Nora Ephron movies that she's made, like When Harry Met Sally, Hanging Up, Sleepless in Seattle, all of that. It's interesting, that lady. Someone needs to really write a book about that someday. I mean, her entire life was used as, was turned into a movie. And there's the Crossword Puzzle. Aftermath of a Tragedy, Revamping and Recovering. All three networks will cover the memorial services for the space shuttle crew at Houston's Johnson Space Center on Friday, and that means ABC, NBC, and CBS. That were with PBS, and unless you had cable, that was all you were watching. ABC anchor Peter Jennings said a World News Tonight crew were to leave the Manila Saturday and began broadcasting there Monday. An ABC spokesman says producer Bill Lord and reevaluating the broadcast plans, and Jennings will probably leave for Manila on Wednesday. There's Maria Shriver. She ended up married Arnold Schwarzenegger. Ratings race is talking about canceling Trapper John MD, which was a spinoff of MASH. No comedy tonight. In memorial to the 7 Challenger astronauts, Tonight Show guest Joan Rivers dropped her Tuesday night monologue. It was the first time since 1965, when Rivers began appearing on Tonight, that the show went on without a monologue. It was the first thing she said. She referred to the tragedy and the depth of it. But we do have to go on, and we're doing a show, said an NBC spokesman. Then she went right back to the desk. I don't even remember her skipping a monologue before, but then it was an unusual day. NBC's other late-night comedian also mentioned the tragic shuttle explosion. During the opening of Late Night with Dave Letterman, Letterman told the audience, "We don't mean to be irreverent, but we're going to do the show." Where was Bryant? Today, anchor Bryant Gumbel was playing golf in Northern California when the shuttle exploded, and producer Steve Friedman decided not to cut short Gumbel's game. Gumbel called his office as soon as he heard the news, but Friedman decided to not let Gumbel play through. "We would like Bryant here every day, but that's just not possible. Every day is a crisis for us. So if I had my way, the guy would never get a break," Friedman says. "If the shuttle were stranded in space and we didn't know what was going to happen, I might have opted to bring him back, but the story basically wasn't going to change between 1 p.m. yesterday and today." They're just basically talking, and it goes on the cable networks and so forth. Cool-headed anchors rise to the task. Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, and Peter Jennings. Year 3. NBC. Tom Brokaw was NBC. Dan Rather was CBS, and Peter Jennings was ABC. Those were the 3 guys. Here's Thursday night's guide for primetime viewing. Let's see what was on TV for Thursday night. 8 o'clock, Ripley's Believe It or Not. A Tarantula Ranch, a man who risks his life to make deliveries. Street to Nowhere, and Soviet Gymnastics and Training. Magnum P.I. Magnum and friends board a cruise ship to protect Hawaiian statuettes. Guest stars Alan Hale, Paul Sand, and William Wyndham. The Cosby Show. Theo schemes to pass a test. Family Ties. Alex opposes a Soviet chess player. Heritage, Civilization of the Jews. NCAA basketball. Alabama, Birmingham at Old Dominion. HBO, Barbra Streisand, the Broadway album. And later on that night on HBO, you could watch Starman with Jeff Bridges. And Murrow, about Edward R. Murrow. On Cinemax, you could watch Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask with Woody Allen and Burt Reynolds. Movie The Falcon and the Snowman with Sean Penn. And then after that, The Sensuous Nurse on Skinemax. Then on the movie channel, you could watch The Sword of the Valiant, one of my personal favorite movies with Miles O'Keefe and Sean Connery. You could watch The In-Laws with Alan Arkin and Peter Falk. And then after that, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. On Showtime, Conan the Destroyer with Arnold and Grace Jones and Wilt Chamberlain. The Honeymooners, The Lost Episodes. And then the Honeymooners were crazy popular in 85 and 86. I don't know why. And then the movie King David with Richard Gere, where he dances around in a diaper. On the Disney Channel, which was a premium channel back then, not what it is now, you could watch Dusty, Masterpiece Theater, the movie The Wonder of It All, Dr. Joyce Brothers on the Disney Channel, and Mark Twain's America. The USA Network had basketball. Petrocelli, the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, and The Edge of Night. WTBS had The African Queen and The Green Berets. Lifetime had The Lazarus Syndrome, Regis Philbin's Lifestyles, The Dr. Ruth Show, and Doctor in Distress. Back to NBC, the lineup: Cosby Show, Family Ties, Cheers, Night Court, and Hill Street Blues. That was generally what was on in my house. But Dad would kind of like watch Magnum and Simon sometimes too. So we ain't actually, let me take that back. We watched Cheers and Night Court when they were in syndication, and we grew to like them. I would watch The Cosby Show and Family Ties in my room, but sometimes we would watch The Cosby Show as a family. Hill Street Blues, my dad always watched that. We never watched Knots Landing. We occasionally watched 2020. We watched The Tonight Show pretty often. My mom watched Mystery. We would set up the VCR to tape Agatha Christie, Miss Marple for my mom. Here's like ads: Ponderosa Steakhouse franchise opportunities, Greyhound Racing. This is just like your classified ads across the USA. Antiques, autos, condos, homes, gift items, travel services, campgrounds. This is all before Google and everything. So you would literally, if you were looking for a certain thing, if you didn't have eBay, you didn't have Amazon, you would look in here if you wanted to buy antiques, if you wanted to buy jewelry, if you if you're looking for something, check the classifieds. And we get back to this Iron Man ad on the back of the paper. So just to recap, this was USA Today, January 30th, 1986. And we covered the whole paper. And we looked at all the sections. We talked about the tragedy that had just happened. It was still fresh. We talked a little bit about the weather that was going on. That cold weather did play into the Challenger. A lot of people said it was too cold to launch it that morning. I mean, it was cold in Florida. And I think it was 30-something degrees that morning in Florida. And the ice shrunk the O-rings in the solid rocket booster. The cold temperatures, they weren't made to launch, but they were pushing for that launch to happen because it would coincide with President Reagan's State of the Union address. And you can't blame this on Reagan, but you can blame it on the people who made the decision to push through a launch when it was too cold to launch it. That's been said. I mean, that was one of the factors. We talked about business. Legal aid could be the 1980s top benefit. That would be, i.e., like prepaid legal services. If you work for a company that offers that, I have found in my experience that those benefits are very overrated, that they don't do very much for you. I had paid for one of those in one of my jobs, and they will make you a will. They will do a few things like that, which are actually things you can do yourself and just take it to a lawyer to get checked. But they claimed in their pitch that they would help you get out of tickets, particularly the camera tickets. If you, the red light cameras. Well, I don't get tickets very often, but one time I did, and they did nothing to help me, so I dropped it. So I was pretty disappointed. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and this tour of 1986 in the news. And I will leave it at that. Until next time. Bye.